All right, guys. So our main topic, our first main topic, we'll say, even though we've been on for an hour now at this point, so at some point, we're gonna speed through this. Probably. Who knows? Stand by. We might go for three. Who knows? But either way, our first main topic came out last week, as I kind of said off the top, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but we're gonna talk about it now, and that is the AT&T selling off Warner Brothers, essentially. So we're going to talk about that because that's big news because that's been acquired by Discovery. And I'll get into that more in a minute because I am going to circle back to that because the other thing, we're combining these topics because they both came out and they're both very similar. So Amazon is going to be buying MGM, which is pretty big for Amazon too because MGM has titles like they did The Hobbit, they have the distribution for James Bond right now. So, I mean, there could be a lot of big things kinda tied in that, pretty much for Amazon to get, like, exclusive, like, rights to in a lot of ways. Because now, at this point, if everything straight carries over, for instance, then Amazon would have the rights to distribute Bond films, you know what I mean? I don't think the Broccoli family has any intention of selling the actual IP of James Bond, but they'll probably just renegotiate the contract after 'cause I don't know the details of, their distribution rights with MGM on, the Bond films, for instance. I don't know what that is. So, like, initially, since Amazon's seemingly going to buy them, that contract would stay in place until it's set to expire, but I don't know what that is. So, for the time being, Amazon's gonna have distribution rights for Bond, as long as the company, like, stays up. Like I said, I don't know what the contract is, so, like, if there could be a clause that says, "If MGM gets bought by any company, then you lose," whatever, and it could be gone, so who knows? So we're gonna talk about that, and we're gonna talk about the AT&T thing. I wanna talk more about the AT&T stuff right now, though, because in the end, this is huge, like, huge for in a lot of ways, and I know there's been a lot of confusion about this, and I'm hoping now after it's been kind of news here for about a week at this point that I'm hoping a lot of it's been kind of cleared up and people aren't as confused because I know there was uh, some kind of like confusing headlines out there because it's the main thing that was throwing people for a loop was that Discovery has. I'm just going to clear it up now. They have bought Warner Brothers in its entirety, so AT&T has nothing to do with Warner Brothers like anymore when this happens. The confusing bit comes in when they saw that the AT&T shareholders are still going to own like I think it's
70,
71% of the shares of this new company. So Discovery buys Warner Brothers, and they're going to be making a new company out of that, like Warner Discover, whatever. Who knows what it's going to be called?
Discovery Bros.
Discovery. That'd be good, dude.
Right.
Discovery Bros would be cool. Too bad they dropped
Discovery
Bros when
Bros.
AT&T came in and made it WarnerMedia, but they could always go back. That'd be cool. I think it's imperative that they don't make the same mistake HBO Max made, and they need to keep the Warner name associated with it on some level. Because we've talked about it a million times. HBO Max coming out was the most confusing thing in the world for everybody, even people like us who are like attuned to this kind of information. Like HBO Now, HBO Go, HBO Max. Like, it's just why not just call it Warner Max? Like, it's called Warner Media, like the company. Why don't you just call it Warner Media? Just
Right.
call it like it's just a streaming service. You buy it. It's Warner Media. Discovery has their own streaming service. It's just called Discovery. Like fuck, like just do it.
Just do it.
I get why they did it because HBO was the brand, but I said it before. The marketing sold itself because if you were advertising the Warner streaming service, all you do is say it comes with HBO, and you're like, oh, cool. Like this is just when it's called HBO Max, it's just like, don't I already have that? But either way, this is huge because for one, most people have pretty much considered, at least in my opinion, and I do agree with this statement in a lot of ways that things haven't been so great for Warner Bros or Warner Media, whatever you want to call them, ever since AT&T took over. AT&T is primarily a telecommunications company, as you know, like they did your internet, your cell phones, your cable, and all that stuff. And they're not. It's not their first time spending a ton of money on something and kind of like failing at it because they just I might get the numbers wrong, but just not too long ago, they bought the DirecTV, and like they ended up selling that out. I think they spent like, God, I want to say like, man, I forget how much it was. I think it was 40 billion, 40 million or something, and then they ended up having to sell it off at a loss, like because it just they couldn't do it. Like, I don't know how they messed like that up because it's like kind of something they already do. Like they're a telecommunications company, so running DirecTV you would think would have been easy for them to do, but it wasn't. So they had to sell that off, and now they. Do you remember off the top of your head how much they bought Warner Brothers for back when? Because I know I think it was 80 billion.
A whole lot.
Yeah.
I think they spent 80 billion on. Yeah, okay, it spent 85 billion on buying Warner Brothers initially. So now they've sold it off to Discovery for 43 billion. So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I know it's been confusing for a lot of people. I'm hoping it's kind of been cleared up for everyone now that a week has gone by. But like
a lot of money.
because Discovery's paid them, like they have nothing to do with it anymore. Now there's AT&T, the company, who are run by X people, but then there's the shareholders above AT&T, the people who actually own the company, like they own the shares behind the organization. They don't run the AT&T company. Like you and like we could own shares in AT&T, like, but we don't run the company. You know what I mean? It's a very different thing.
Yeah.
The people who own AT&T or run AT&T they no longer have any ties to WarnerMedia. The shareholders of AT&T still own 71% of Warner Brothers, and as it goes into this new company, because it's not just Warner Brothers, it's the Discovery Warner combining into Discovery Bros or whatever. That's going to be owned by 71% AT&T shareholders, not the company, and then the remaining 29% or whatever is going to be Discovery shareholders. So it's not.
That's where it's confusing to me. Like, so if I'm an AT&T shareholder, if I'm and the fact that they said that, you know, AT&T was spinning them off into a new company, like, you know, I made the example.
Some articles were confusing, yeah.
Yeah, if I own or if I own a comic book store and I spin off the toy section of my comic book store into a completely new store that's just about toys, like, I'm still the owner of that store. Even though it's a separate store that's just toys, I'm still the owner of that store. I still get the revenue and have influence on how that store works. If I'm not the owner, then who becomes the owner? How does that?
Right.
So it's a very complicated process. I'm very confused. I'm still confused about, because it says that 71% of the shares are going to be held by AT&T shareholders. Does that mean if I'm an AT&T shareholder and I have, 100 shares of AT&T, will I get, an additional, 10 shares of this new company that comes out, or do part of my AT&T shares convert over to this new company? Like, I don't understand the whole idea behind it. Is it, do they just make it up out of thin air? Do you just, receive in the mail one day your certificate saying that you now own 10 shares of this new company?
It's yours now.
So
that's something we may never know too.
I need someone to like do it. Somebody that understands this stuff to do a deep dive and write an article on how exactly this process works. Because that's my biggest fear, is that AT&T will somehow exert some amount of influence over the decisions going forward. The decisions have been so poor over the past half decade that, while this news on the surface seems good, I'm worried that it's not.
Well, that's the thing. It's the people who were in charge of AT&T and like Warner before were the people running AT&T. You know what I mean? Not the AT&T shareholders. Even though they make for instance, the CEO of AT&T might be a majority shareholder. I don't know. That's the thing. Is like, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know if like who exactly the shareholders are. You know what I mean? But it could be people who make no decisions.
Right.
Here's my thing though. Like, if all the shares of this new company that are being made, if they're just some like amalgam version of AT&T shares, then the AT&T execs who have to answer to their shareholders are still going to be exerting influence over the decisions that are made at the new company, because it's the bigger of the company. It's their shareholders that are reliant on this new company to be successful. So that's where I get worried about it. But it is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take it on faith that it's a good thing and that AT&T is finally out of the game.
The only saving grace to it is let me pull up his name. Who is the CEO of Discovery? This new company, like Discovery Bros or whatever it's going to be called, Warner Discover, like who knows? We should do like a poll and see if we can, once they do announce it, if we get it right. Just for fun.
Discovery Bros would be incredible.
Discovery Bros would be awesome.
It'd
I don't
be
think it would
great.
ever happen,
No.
but like we were running that company.
That's what it'd be called.
It'd be Discovery Bros. Like, come on, like why would
The
it not?
Bros that discover.
Like, but Warner Discover sounds good. Like, I don't know. I could honestly see it being called Warner Discover, and then instead of it being WB, it's now WD. So it's like
WD.
very similar in that sense phonetically. But the saving grace to it is the CEO of Discover, so the guy who has led Discover to all the success that they've had, like with their streaming service and just over the years in general. He's been the David Zaslav has been the CEO of Discover since 2007 January.
That's a long time.
So he is going to be in charge of this new company once it's everything's finalized and everything's good to go. None of the leadership from AT&T or Warner Brothers or anything are going to be actually leading the company itself. It's a guy who has been running Discovery for the last 14 years and who has led them to some very good success. Because it's crazy. I would have never thought that a little thing that like just a Discovery Network getting their own streaming service like offhand sounds like a stupid idea. It's like what are they going to have to offer? Like why are they going to who's going to sub to that, But apparently they have almost like 20 million subscribers. Like they've borderline done better like on subscription numbers than like HBO Max has done.
Right.
And that's kind of the beauty of this, like for HBO Max, is like if this stuff's going to be combined, like there's a ton of titles now. It's drastically different content than like what's on HBO. It's a lot of reality kind of television stuff. Like the Property Brothers is on there. The what else? Here's like a list.
Pioneer
Fixer
Woman.
Upper.
Love
Like
that show.
of the big ones. I mean, 90 Day Fiance. Like I know that's popular.
Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah. So all these things. Property Brothers, I actually like that show. It's a good show.
Those are good guys.
Like
yeah.
House Hunters is like honestly, a lot of the stuff, the content that Discovery has is great background noise content. Like none of it's like drama. Like HBO is like the drama fueled stuff. Like that's what you're watching. You don't want to take your eyes off of. But obviously, you'd be surprised at how many people just like watch this content and just have it on like day to day. Like I said, they have like somewhere between 15 and 20 million subscribers just to Discovery Plus. Like, which is crazy because this is their content. Like, it's nothing that we talk about on our show. You know what I mean? It's not what our show's about. Like, we talk about like the movies and movie news and stuff like that. They have a show called UFO Witness. So, Rick, we've been talking about We Want to Believe coming back.
Oh, it's coming back.
We can see what the hell's on there.
Don't call it a comeback.
But I mean, they also own they own HGTV, they own like Animal Planet, Discovery, obviously. So that would also come along with stuff that I actually do like Information Discovery, which is like all the true crime stuff. Like all this cool shit is actually a part of Discovery.
Yeah.
And like in general, the thought of like all of this stuff being roped into HBO Max, or at least some of it, or there being some sort of bundle deal, all this remains to be unseen as like what the details are going to be. But it could be huge for HBO Max if like this stuff is just 100% integrated. Like, because that's just a whole other. It's just like when they absorbed all the DC content. It's like now all that's just a part of. Like when DC Universe itself went away, and they absorbed it all because, like, obviously Warner owns DC and that IP, and that's never going to go anywhere. But actually, with the way Warner Brothers has been running lately, I'm surprised they didn't try to sell something off to make a pretty penny. Like, wouldn't it be crazy if Disney owned like DC? And like Disney owned DC, Marvel, Star Wars.
Dude, at that point,
it's crazy.
That'd be wild.
You know what's crazy too? Think about this. George Lucas sold George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney. I forget what year it was, or like, what was it, like 2003, 2007? Maybe 2012? I forget when it was.
I think it was like 2012.
It may have been. I don't remember. Either way, but he sold it for $4.3 billion. Just Star. I'm really curious as to how much that would sell today, like with today's numbers. Because when they bought Marvel, when Disney bought Marvel, I think it was only like $1-2 billion or something. Like, there's not a price on earth that is like anybody could do to pay for Marvel right now.
Oh God, that's priceless.
Star Wars, same way. It's crazy.
That's a good segue into the MGM aspect of this story that we were talking about, because I've been seeing people say that Amazon spending $9 billion for MGM is like it's supremely overvalued. The company's they think the company's only worth like 5.5 billion. They're paying way too much. There were quite a few articles talking about how much over they were paying for it. But here's the thing, like, okay, let's say the new James Bond movie, whatever the marketing and production costs are, even if they're like $500,000, that movie's going to make $1 billion worldwide. So you're clearing, $500 million. So then you take 500 million off that purchase price, you're down to 8.5. And then you take all the other properties and everything else. I mean, it's only going to take them. Now, I understand you've got that debt or you've got that cash negative balance on your sheets for a year or two, but it's only going to take, 3, 4, maybe 5 years at the most to see a break-even point. And then beyond that, everything becomes, especially if it's done well, everything becomes profit off that sale. I understand, like, people live in the immediacy of like, what is the number now? How much do they have now and stuff? But like, unless they completely screw the pooch like AT&T did with, just imagine if AT&T had just sucked it up, went to Warner Brothers, went to the executives at Warner Brothers and said, "Hey, look, you see what Marvel's doing with their movies? Do that. Just stop messing around. Just do that." And Disney or DC had a film franchise that was even half as successful as Marvel's, there'd be no way AT&T would be spinning DC off. There would be no way they'd be letting WarnerMedia go. They'd be just printing money the way that Marvel and Disney are. So, but they weren't smart enough, and ultimately, hopefully, it's a good thing for DC properties that they're going back to an entertainment-based ownership. But we'll see.
Dude, that's what's crazy to think of. Like, look at what Disney was able to do with just Marvel as an IP.
Yeah,
right.
And like, AT&T owned all of Warner Brothers, dude. Like, that's
all
beyond DC. Like, they owned HBO. Like, they owned DC. They owned like so much stuff. And like they owned Game of Thrones, man. Like, Game of Thrones was
and
huge.
Look at how much stuff got botched in that whole process. Like, ever since they've been the ending of Game of Thrones botched, the rollout of Justice League and the DC film universe botched. I mean, two mammoth properties that just fell flat on their face, and you have to think that AT&T's inexperience or not just not knowing what they're doing played a large part in that. Now, and their choice and talent to lead those divisions, because clearly the people that were in charge of those divisions fumbled the ball too. Somebody should have gone to Benioff and Weiss, the Game of Thrones guys, and said, "Hey, look, this is what we need. Can you guys deliver it? And like, we understand you've done a great job." And if they say, "Well, yeah, we can do it, but we're going to rush through it or whatever," be like, "No, fine, we'll bring somebody else on." Like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
They should.
I guess we don't need to rehash all that, but
yeah. What were you saying, Rick?
No, I was just gonna say the end of Game of Thrones was so bad.
Oh yeah, they should have, honestly. Like, I would have rather them take an extra year and work with George and just come up with something. Like, just iron out better. Shortening the seasons, the last 2 seasons, was not the right thing to do. Like, even if it was executed better, it wasn't worth it. It wouldn't have been worth it.
No,
Like, we lost so much more content out of that, just in general. Like, even if it was good, it's like it went from what, like, how many episodes was it? Like, I think we lost like 5 or 6 episodes.
Final season,
yeah. So we lost like somewhere between, I think it was 6 to 8 episodes total. I think so. There's like 6 to 8 hours of Game of Thrones that just like was gone. Like,
that they could have cleared a lot of things up.
Yeah, they could have just made everything just so much more coherent. Like, based on what we got, they could have just made it better with that extra 6 hours. Like, If they
Yeah.
wanted to make it shorter, then they should have just taken more time to make it better.
Right.
I understand the idea of they created it and like they made it into the monster juggernaut show that it was. But if they were just done with it, if they wanted to move on to their Star Wars franchise and start developing that, and they didn't want to put the work in that they put into to the first 5 seasons, like just say, look, we appreciate all you've done, but if you don't have a vision, if you don't have a story to tell that can be told properly, then we're going to move on and bring somebody in that can. I mean,
They're not even doing the Star Wars thing anymore.
well, I know because of how
because
poorly
of
the
that,
end of
yeah.
Game of Thrones. Exactly.
And I'm sure that played a part in it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were like, we don't want these guys screwing this up. Like,
Well, honestly, too, with Star Wars and the place that it was in, they weren't really like, which is by their own fault as well as on Lucasfilm for the sequel trilogy for getting them into that position. But like, they're really, unfortunately, weren't really in a position to take a risk with Star Wars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
You know what I mean? So it's like they had to go for like a sure thing, which Mandalorian was, I mean, a sure thing.
oh god, yeah.
Like,
That saved the
it
franchise.
seems like it was a sure thing. I mean, obviously leading into it, it really wasn't. But once they saw it worked,
Oh, it worked.
Yeah.
they're obviously sticking to that. Like they announced like 10 new shows. So like that's what Star Wars is going to be for the next couple of years is TV.
Which
So-
I'm fine with if it's anything like the Mandalorian.
As long as
quality,
it stays
obviously.
good.
Yep.
Long
Well,
as
when
it
you
stays
get
good.
that, it's not like I gotta wait 3 years for one movie to come out. It's like, oh, I get new episodes every week, and then on top of that, there's multiple shows that'll be coming out. So with that, you're gonna have a ton of Star Wars content.
I'm really looking forward to a couple years from now once more shows get in development.
Oh,
Because
you
we're
can
going
only
to be talking
imagine what
about
they're
one
gonna
of them
do with
here
it.
in a little bit. Yeah.
If these shows do well, you can imagine like what they'll do. Like maybe we should make a KOTOR movie. Maybe we should, like
Yeah, and that's supposedly what Benioff and Weiss were working on. Like
I could see that.
That's what made the most sense. It never
For
came,
them, yeah.
Yeah, it was never confirmed, but it was rumored that they were working on an Old Republic trilogy.
Well, apparently the High Republic really isn't doing well. Like the
No. Well,
books
that's
and all
why
that
we were
stuff.
talking about too. That like it seems like they might be trying to merge the High Republic lore into the Legends lore of KOTOR and stuff.
There's a freaking rock on that.
I hope they don't. Either way, we'll talk Star Wars here at the end of the show. Before we wrap up this this segment here, I've got the titles of MGM. So going off of what John was saying with people not thinking Amazon's overpaying. For one, it's Amazon. Jeff Bezos, $9 billion. What like he finds that
pocket
in his
change.
couch. That's like couch money. This is Jeff
He
Bezos.
spent
we're
more on
talking
dinners
about.
before.
Yeah,
Like,
dude. Like you got to remember who you're talking about when you're talking about the
literally
money,
like one of the most powerful men in the world.
yeah, literally, he is the
Over-
richest man on the planet.
Over
Right.
governments and stuff. Yeah.
Like it's just nothing for Jeff Bezos. Like, yeah, $9 billion to Joe Schmoes like us here. That's life-changing, game-changing shit, man. Like, I could do this all day if I had $9 billion. But God, that's not going to happen. Like, you know what I mean? But nevertheless, I don't think they're underpaying at all. I think it's just honestly inflation and where the times are at. Because look at before I bring up the title, since I have them here anyway, look at what Netflix just did for one title in Knives Out. They spent almost $500 million just for the exclusive rights to those two movies. Well, technically that would include the first one too. But this one franchise, they spent almost $500 million on it. It's because of the landscape we're in right now with the streaming stuff. The streaming wars. Like Amazon is in a position to where one, they can afford this, and two, it's only going to benefit them. There's no downside to it. They're not going to be unlike most companies, they're not going to be in a deficit or notice this $9 billion being gone. It's not going to put them in a bad situation as a company at all. Like they're Amazon. It's no different than Apple like spinning up a streaming service, and like they're not blinking an eye right now, like running Apple TV Plus, even though it's probably the lowest subscriber service. Like it doesn't matter to them. Like they have the money to back it and have it grow naturally. It doesn't affect them at all. So, but anyway, to actually get into the specifics here, there's a 4,000 film library that would come with MGM, and that includes the James Bond franchise, like we were talking about, Hobbit, like I mentioned, Creed and the Rocky franchise, RoboCop, Pink Panther, Silence of the Lambs, Magnificent Seven, Four Weddings, and a Funeral. 17,000 episodes of television alone. The Stargate franchise, which has been rumored to be like trying to get back up in another television show or movie format for the last couple of years. The American Gladiator show,
Good show.
tons stuff. They own Shark Tank, which is huge. Like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, like these, which like we don't care
The
about. And then
Voice,
Survivor and The Voice, like we don't really care about these things,
but they're popular.
They're huge. Like they're huge things. So like these things would be like, if they don't go through like Amazon Prime exclusive titles, they're going to be available on Amazon Prime. That's huge for Amazon. Like that's a big coup
You can
for
only
them.
win in this situation.
Yeah, like so, like they're not like John said, they're gonna recoup this money just from James Bond alone in like 10 years easy. If they make a movie per year, each one's gonna gross about $1 billion. Like as long as they're good, the last couple with Daniel Craig have made $1 billion, if not right around the ballpark. So like James Bond alone will cover this stuff. And then if you were to even include the Hobbit stuff, like those made $1 billion on average. And those weren't even good movies.
They weren't.
So like they're definitely not. Oh, they might be. I mean, I can see why someone would be saying they're overpaying, but I just feel like they're in a position where they can. And it's going to benefit them a lot more to spend the money to secure the deal than because I mean it's probably just a simple thing of like outbidding the competition. Like if they were up for sale, I'm sure Amazon is not the only people that were trying to buy them, because there's a lot of good stuff here, and those are just like the highlights that this article shows off that like would come with MGM. And they're in a very similar situation as the AT&T and with or not the AT&T, but the Warner and Discovery thing, because like we obviously care more about the HBO Max portion of it, how it's going to affect the Warner side of everything, and them combining with Discovery is a huge coup for HBO Max more so than anything. Like all of the content that Discovery has a solid fan base. Like I said, it's like 15 to 20 million subscribers strong on the Discovery Plus network alone. If they could just absorb and combine HBO Max and Discovery Plus, like you're talking about
Do you think that's what
doubling
they're
your
doing
stuff.
though?
I don't know. I would say that's the smarter
See,
thing to
I
do,
don't.
but
I think it's going to be. I think you're going to end up with a Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN situation where you have a. They will offer a package that includes Discovery streaming and HBO Max, but I don't think we're going to see the HBO Max or the Discovery content rolled into the HBO Max platform.
I think it depends on where they see, honestly, because if I'm leading the company, I'm looking at where the most potential is.
Right.
And I think the most potential would come from HBO Max, like the
Sure.
throughput. So I would probably do both. I wouldn't want to alienate my Discovery Plus viewers, so I would keep it as is. But then I would also roll stuff in. I would just there'd be no harm in them because they're the same company making things that are available in Discovery also available on HBO, because there's a higher price tag on HBO and it doesn't alienate the Discovery subscribers. As long as everything stays the same for the Discovery people, it's just more of a coup for HBO to have some, if not all of it included. Because like you're right, I don't think they should just completely delete the Discovery thing, because they have like I said, it's like 20 million subscribers on this, and they wouldn't want to have to make those subscribers pay, because I think it's only like $5 a month for Discovery Plus. So
that's not much at all.
Yeah, it's like 3 times that for HBO. So they definitely wouldn't want to say, well, sucks to suck, guys, you're going to have to get HBO Max now, and it's triple the cost. So they would never do that. Like if they did, like they're terrible businessmen. Like they know they're way smarter than I am about it, and I know you should never do that. Like you don't want to alienate your core audience here. The amount of subscribers they have is what put them in a position to be able to buy Warner Brothers for $43 billion. Like, so you keep everything going how it is, and you just improve upon the stuff they just bought. So I think it's going to kind of reshape. The primary thing they're going to do is reshape HBO and restructure Warner Brothers in its entirety. I think it's the biggest thing we're going to see. Like leadership in WB is not going to stay the same. Like, I don't know if it's just going to be like a Disney Fox thing where pretty much most of, if not all, the Disney heads replace the Fox heads. You know what I mean? Like none of the Fox, a very small amount of like upper level Fox, like representatives kept their job. They were like repurposed or completely let go because people already had those positions at Disney, and Disney was working. Fox was not working. So it would make more sense to keep the things that are working in place, you know? So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see it. So I don't know. I think it's nothing but good news. Do you have something you want to add?
So like, you think Walter Hamada is going to be out at DC?
No, I think I think a lot of if I had to guess, and it's possible, but DC and like more specific titles like that, they don't have any, like Walter Hamada doesn't have any real weight as far as WB, ahead of WB goes, because he's been really like marginalized to the head of DC. So there's no
But
one at Discovery.
that's arguably their biggest brand.
Mhm. But I just don't know if there's anybody at Discovery who would be able to who's experienced with DC properties at Discovery.
Right.
Yeah, I always think
That's the
about
thing I don't know.
it though. Yeah, I always think about it like, in sports terms, whenever a team gets a new coach, they always talk about how the coach wants to bring in his guys.
Oh yeah,
And
100%.
and so I kind of wonder if Hamada might be on the way out. They've talked about Jason Killar, is it Killar that's
Yeah,
the head
something like
of
that.
WarnerMedia now, is already negotiating his
Mhm.
contract out of Warner Brothers before this whole deal goes down. So I'm just curious if Hamada will be out, and subsequently some of the other DC people will be leaving or changing. So,
I think down the
do you,
road
and then
probably,
yeah, and the
if it
other
doesn't work
aspect of
out.
this was or not DC, Warner Media. I want to call them Warner Brothers. I don't know why they changed it to Warner Media. Anyway,
Right.
Warner Brothers, Warner Media, whatever it is, they received a ton of bad press and bad will on the part of people in the movie industry, directors and actors, for their day and date release on HBO Max, because apparently they didn't talk to anybody. They just decided we're going to go day and date in theaters and on HBO Max, which we've talked about before, impacts the pocketbooks of a lot of those actors and directors, because they get cuts of the movies, theatrical releases, and by releasing on HBO Max, you're kind of cutting them off. Plus, then there's people like Christopher Nolan who don't want their films played on TV first. They film them with the intent for them to be played in theaters, and they felt like that was kind of marginalizing the importance of the theater experience. Do you think part of this decision was AT&T just wanting to get away from that? Like, do you think they looked at it and were like, we really messed up? Like, this is a huge problem for us. We're losing all this talent. And the hope is that by spinning them off, maybe this new company will not be as stigmatized by that decision.
I think, yeah, I think everything that you mentioned, and then just how, like COVID aside, none of their stuff has worked out as they intended. The HBO Max rollout, they haven't been able to get as many subscribers. They're way behind on subscriber counts than they wanted to be. And especially they spent like 70 to $100 million just to get the Snyder cut out, and that didn't bring
Yeah.
in enough subscribers to even justify spending the money to make that. So when you look at that on top of just all the other, like DC for one, like that since 2017 with Justice League, that the DC properties they just haven't been doing anything financially like that's comparable to, sustaining the $83 billion cost that they spent, the AT&T had spent on Warner Brothers. They clearly haven't seen the return they wanted, like, in any
Yeah.
way. Like, they've floundered it with, DC, they floundered it with HBO, and those, like, are those, I think those are hands down their 2, like, biggest money makers, at least potential money makers for sure, would be their DC titles and HBO in general. And with both those, they've just failed. And then you combine that with Warner Brothers always having been a very director and creative driven studio. like let the directors direct. They've always been director friendly, and they put they do the art. They focus on the artist, and they let the
As they
directors do
should.
whatever they want. Exactly, but them alienating every single director in the industry and every movie maker in the industry by doing the straight to video thing or straight to HBO Max day and date releases didn't help anything. So not only did for the last some odd years since they bought HBO or they bought Warner Brothers rather, they haven't seen the financial gains that they were hoping from it. And they kind of in the last year or two just pissed everybody off. So
Not a good spot to be in.
yeah, you have like the best top tier filmmakers in the world, like Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve, wanting absolutely nothing to do with your Warner Brothers anymore. And it's a weird place to be in when Warner Brothers is like historically one of the best studios. They make some of the best movies that have ever been made, like especially genre movies. Like I always you think of Lord of the Rings, The Matrix, DC movies. Like it's crazy to think how they just have squandered everything. And this is just the stuff that that we know about. You know what I mean? There's plenty of stuff that we don't keep up to date with. Just like there's plenty of people out there who don't care about like movies and comic books as much as we do. So who knows how bad things have been outside of like the public eye? Like obviously it hasn't been good. I think there was just an article out not too long ago talking about, I forget who was mentioning this, but it was someone working at Warner Brothers who was saying that like some of the biggest impact they've had just with like trying to make any movies in general is that like a lot of the higher level executives keep getting swapped out. So like they'll go and like pitch a movie, start go to get in production on something, but then the person they were working with got fired or moved somewhere else, and now there's some new guy there, so they have to pretty much repeat the entire process all over again. Like this new guy didn't greenlight the pitch. They didn't have anything to do with your previous pitch, so it's like now you got to go and redo all the work, and they have completely different input on whatever to get the movie made. So like there's just been a huge issue with production from on the movie side of things just because of the turnover rate in their like C-level area. So it just hasn't been a good place to work. So, in a very long way to answer your question, yes, I do think it has something to do with that. But I think it's mainly just a combination of things that have just led to them essentially just wanting to cut their losses and get out. Because I think a statement was made by AT&T that they're one of the reasons they're doing it is they just want completely out of the entertainment industry, and so they want to go back to just being a telecommunications thing. That's like
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Which you're a telecommunications company anyway, and that's just where they want to keep it. And like I said, they floundered it. Both tries they had with entertainment, they effed up. They first did it with on a smaller scale with DirecTV, ended up having to sell that off as a loss, and now they're doing the same thing with Warner Brothers. So I think the more interesting question is where's AT&T going to be at in like 5-10 years? This is a lot of money they just kind of had to piss away. Like it doesn't necessarily work out to like because they bought Warner for 83 billion and then they just sold it for 43 billion. That's not a direct 1-to-1 40 billion loss because the money that they've made up during that time they've owned it, but it's still like in the most simple of terms, they sold it off for half the price they bought it for. And then DirecTV was in a very similar situation. I think they ended up selling it for like 16 billion or something, and they bought it for closer to 30 or 40. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was still like almost the same kind of thing. So they bought something for X price and had to sell it for 50% of what they paid. That's happened twice now. So I don't know. We'll just have to see. I'm curious if AT&T is still going to be a thing in 10 years. And I'm more hopeful as to what the hell Discovery Bros is going to be in like
Right.
5-10 years. Now I just want them to do Discovery Bros though. So we'll just have to wait. So you guys have anything else you want to add on this one? We've been going on this one for a minute.
Yeah.
There's a lot to cover though.
I mean, there's a lot to cover. The only thing we didn't talk about, and I can make it really quick, is it was also mentioned that they are getting rid of the AT&T is getting rid of most of the WB Interactive, the WB gaming division, but they are retaining some aspect of it. And we talked about this on Discord, where we both think the only thing they'll retain will be the mobile side. Any of the studios that focus on mobile gaming, just because of the synergy there between mobile gaming and AT&T, the phone business, the mobile device business. So
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can just pull up the article real quick. Because yeah, that was a strange. It was a strange article to come out because it came out around the same time as the HBO thing. I think I have it here. But it was kind of vague with there were no details. On this side, there's kind of no details with what exactly is going
well,
to be happening with
this whole thing was like leaked. It wasn't AT&T didn't come out and announce this. This was leaked Monday, and then AT&T was kind of forced to kind of verify it later on that day. But all this was
yeah, because in this article too, it's very vague because like the headline is more scary than the actual article because it says like Arkham and Mortal Kombat publisher WB Games reportedly being split up and buyout, which makes you think that like
They're going to be
both the
still.
titles are going to be like to somebody else, but they're just using them as examples of games that are being published by WB. So what's really happening, because there's no specifics, doesn't say anything that like the game studio that makes like the Arkham games is both WB Montreal and Rocksteady, and then Mortal Kombat is NetherRealm. None of those things are mentioned. Like none of those actual game developers are mentioned. It just says that
They use the blanket term of Warner Brothers.
yeah, they say that some are going to stay, some are going to go. And to my point with it, like the only thing I can think of is that they're going to maintain their telecommunications company. It would only make sense for them to retain mobile game developers. It would make absolutely zero sense for them to keep like AAA gaming companies that were licensed under like Warner Brothers Games, like Rocksteady and NetherRealm Studios and WB Montreal. Like, why would AT&T keep them? It wouldn't really make any sense because they're a part of like for instance the Arkham games in the end and they're a part of the DC, like in the grand scheme of things it's a DC title, so and all of DC has been confirmed as a part of the sell-off, so in no way could AT&T keep anything related to the actual Arkham series games. So by virtue of that, like Rocksteady wouldn't be under any sort of AT&T control because they're making the DC property game. And then it's kind of the same thing with NetherRealm. Like the only thing that makes sense here is I'm sure this will be cleared up further, but they are definitely just going to be keeping mobile game developers on the back end. It's the only thing that makes sense because they're going to be pumping out their cell phones and their cell phone plans and all that stuff. So keeping some game developers, maybe from some of these companies, because I'm sure all of these developers have a mobile division for some of their games. So I'm sure they're probably just retaining some of that talent to just work for AT&T in their mobile development section, like whether it's for games, whether if it's just for programming, for dev, who knows? But it doesn't make any damn sense for them to keep Rocksteady, like because they physically can't keep Rocksteady or WB Montreal because for one, it's WB like exclusively the WB Montreal part, but like I said, it's been confirmed that all of DC was included in the sale, so like that would include the games. Like you can't keep a Batman game if you're selling off DC.
Right.
So we'll have to wait for more news to come out with that. It's just kind of a vague thing. It's kind of a unfortunate situation too, where there's just like so little information about it, and then multiple places report on it, and they kind of make their own headlines on it, and it just kind of makes things very misleading. Because even in that article, there were people like going in and like correcting and giving updates with like tweets, like live since the article became public. We'll just have to wait and see, though. I don't think it's going to impact anything in relation to the actual gaming studios, though. I'm sure they're going to be fine. So we'll just have to wait and see. You guys got anything else you want to add?
No.
All right, we're going to move along then. So, guys, question is, what do you think about this, and which do you think is the bigger deal? Because, like I said, this story, the AT&T story, came out the day that our show last week went live. So, like last Monday is when all this kind of news dropped, and then the Amazon MGM stuff happened later on in the week. So, this is our first chance that we've been able to get together and actually discuss it. So, I think it's a win for both cases. So I think it's a coup for Amazon to get the MGM titles, and I think it's great for everybody to have Warner now being owned or merged into a company whose leadership and primary drive and goals is they're an entertainment company. Discovery's always been in the entertainment business. So it just makes kind of more sense for them to be at least a part of something that is focused on entertainment as opposed to, some rich telecommunications company buying it because they wanted to kind of thing. So I think it's good news, but let us know what you guys think down in the comment section below.